As someone with an inordinate amount of time in Destiny, the one thing that I knew about Marathon from day one is that it was going to have amazing gunplay. However, I've never played an extraction shooter, and I've barely seen any footage of the biggest one, Escape from Tarkov. With that said, I was super excited to try out Marathon and form my own opinion about the game. Although the art style was a bit weird, I think it's very strong and is very communicative of the universe that Bungie has built for the game. One of the first things that I thought was that everything looked like plastic, which was pretty much confirmed in universe in one of the very first cinematic scenes.
Subject's consciousness is preserved while a new shell is printed. Please stand by.
Watching the gameplay reveal, one of the only things that I could think of was that it looked a lot like Apex Legends. My TLDR of the alpha after one day is that the runner's abilities and moment-to-moment gameplay were a good bit slower than I anticipated, with the items that you loot, extract, deploy, and die with having the biggest impact on changing them. The gameplay loop with the contracts and factions seems cool right now, but I fear it might become a checklist where the external motivation of completing the contracts and even extracting begins to overshadow the internal motivation of gameplay itself being the reward, which is one of my biggest problems I had with Destiny after around 10 years. Upon actually getting into the game, I immediately noticed that it was a bit slower than I had anticipated. The game is utilizing an overheating system. We're doing most actions, even sprinting and double jumping, contributes to overheating. The second thing I noticed was how similar the actual setup was to Apex, in terms of shields and consumables. I also immediately noticed just how strong some of the enemy AI was, which helped the matches feel a little bit more tense. My biggest complaint, and something that I feel would vastly improve the game, is if I could loot more similarly to how you can in Apex, where you can move while looting, and running away from it cancels the looting menu. It currently just feels like a barrier to make looting a bigger decision, and I would just like to react to threats somewhat competently while looting. I don't have any complaints, however, about how loot loads into the menu when you're looking at it. That feels like an important aspect of an extraction shooter to have. Although the game felt slow, it wasn't too long until I actually started running into people, killing them, and looting them. Sometimes you get access to some pretty good stuff, but there were a lot of times when I killed somebody and I just got nothing better than what I currently had equipped. One of the coolest things that I found was a backpack that unlocked all of the slots of my inventory, which also increased its value every time I extracted with it. Dude, this backpack is crazy. However, I would end up losing this a few hours after I got it. Other loot that I got most excited about was a stronger weapon, well as an item that allowed me to apply more shields to myself. For example, think of an upgraded shield in Apex Legends. I was trying to get these every game. And once we really get into the items, you can see that there were actually so many options and so many different items that you can apply to your character. A lot of the items that you find are going to have different stats that affect your character when applied. This seems like it's going to be one of the major ways to interact with your runner in the late game, so I'm really curious to see what an endgame build would look like when the season is coming to a close. That being said, once I got a taste of having some powerful items, it felt so bad to not have them anymore. Not just because somebody took them from me, but because now I have no item space, or my gun is just the generic AR once again. Which, yes, I understand is part of the game, but I felt so weak after losing my strong stuff. This brings me to a bit of the crux of my opinion on the game so far. I really want to see what the endgame build would look like. Currently, it's just a bit slow, and I don't want to say boring, but not much happens in the game. So much of the game looks and feels like Apex Legends, and the best parts of the game are the player engagements where we're fighting other players. This is where I see the biggest issue in the game, because all of the time I'm waiting to have those player engagements, and in some games, I didn't even see people at all. As much as I feel like I shouldn't compare this game with Apex Legends, the gameplay compels me to do so. Therefore, I am beginning to compare the player engagements to one another, and the problem with that is that there's so little of it in Marathon, and in Apex, that is pretty much the majority of the game. And because of this, Marathon begins to feel a bit like the boring parts of Apex. I do, however, feel that I'm being somewhat harsh in this regard. There are a lot of systems that have the potential to be really cool, but I have not seen them in their fully kitted out states. And I want to reiterate that I had fun while playing the alpha. It was a good time. It just seems like all the player gear that you equip and lose is going to make a big difference in how the game currently plays versus later in the season. It'll be very interesting to see how it evolves over time. In all, I'm still not sure if this game is going to hook me. because while I definitely had fun during my first day of the alpha, obvious that I've only played with a portion of the items so far. As my first extraction shooter that I've ever played, I haven't been convinced that this style of gameplay loop is for me. I'm curious to see what the items can do for your runner, but I'm also still scared of the factions feeling more like a checklist, a challenge. In conclusion, I really don't want to write this game off so immediately, because it does seem like there's some really big and fleshed out systems that are waiting to be taken advantage of. But at the moment, things are a bit slow. I'm not sure it has the power to hook people. I want to remind everybody that this is an alpha. These are just my first opinions. But yeah, hope to see you next time. Stay gnarly. Bye.